In Hollywood, Rachel Zegler has become a contentious figure who personifies the intricacy of the entertainment industry in regard to representation and diversity. Even while she regularly presents herself as a supporter of diversity, her actions and words occasionally contradict this, giving the public a mixed impression. Theoretically, her stance on representation is commendable, but her choices often give the sense that she is not serious, which makes others question her sincerity. Zegler's rise to fame, which is demonstrated by several high-profile positions, draws attention to a more significant issue in Hollywood: the idea of selective representation. This trend often reveals the industry's tendency to use values, such as diversity, for pragmatic ends rather than pursuing true progress. An important reminder that artificial sexism, which impacts not only major film holds, news about representation can sometimes be overshadowed by actions or statements that are perceived as hypocritical. Consider her now famous interview about the Snow White remake. In a matter of minutes, Zegler seemed to contradict the importance of true representation in her own casting while simultaneously defending it. She emphasized the need of accurately portraying nationalities while embracing her role as Snow White, a character with German folklore roots despite her Latina heritage. Even while Zegler praised her appointment as revolutionary, pointing out that Snow White had never been portrayed by someone of Latin origin, this logic is flawed. By her own standards, shouldn't the role have gone to someone with German or Polish heritage, in keeping with the character's heritage? This disparity highlights a recurring issue. Representation is valued when it benefits her, but ignored when it doesn't. This is a prime example of Hollywood's tendency to alter values to fit personal or commercial objectives. Zegler avoids valid criticism by emphasizing her white Latina ethnicity and frequently portraying herself as a moral evangelist. This restricted usage of heritage can come across as more of a tactical defensive than a genuine acknowledgement of ethnic identity. Her opinions on West Side Story and Snow White show even more contradictions in her speech. She speaks passionately about representation, yet her disdain for criticism from the Puerto Rican and German communities undermines her credibility. Although the film industry as a whole frequently discusses change, it hardly ever puts it into practice. In Zegler's case, this phenomenon is visible in the microcosm. The Snow White remake serves as the clearest example of these contradictions. The film deprives the character of her traditional narrative and recasts her as a modern character, rather than maintaining the character's original significance. Fans who appreciate the timeless lessons of self-worth and kindness found it offensive when Zegler called the original extremely dated. This rebranding runs the risk of severing ties with generations of followers and appears more like a corporate-driven attempt to appeal to contemporary audiences than it does like genuine advancement. Zegler's presence just intensifies the argument because of her divergent opinions on representation. This issue revolves around Zegler's deceptive use of her identity. By portraying herself as a supporter of representation, she avoids accepting accountability for the inconsistencies in her actions. Her selective advocacy raises the question of whether genuine inclusion or self-interest are her top concerns. The broader issues facing the industry are revealed by Zegler's acceptance as a diversity icon in Hollywood. Despite being promoted as a moral necessity, representation is typically turned to a marketing gimmick. Zegler's experience illustrates how easily the ideals of inclusivity may be seized for personal or commercial benefit, ultimately undermining the progress they are meant to promote. In addition to Snow White, her portrayal of Maria in West Side Story also exhibits contradictions. The figure is deeply ingrained in Puerto Rican culture, despite Zegler's lack of Puerto Rican connections. Even though her mother is Colombian, the Puerto Rican community took offense at her lack of strong Puerto Rican ties. Rachel Zegler is a controversial figure in Hollywood who is sometimes criticized for her contradictory comments and actions, while yet regularly commended for her support of diversity. Even though she portrays herself as an advocate for representation, many question her genuineness due to the manner in which her choices regularly contradict this stance. Her rise to stardom, marked by major roles in West Side Story and the next Snow White remake, demonstrates Hollywood's tendency to selectively apply the ideals of representation. An excellent example is her decision to portray the character of Snow White, a character from German mythology. Zegler, who is Latina, praised the casting as historic, pointing out that no one with Latin ancestry has ever played Snow White. But her own defense of cultural authenticity raises the question: According to the character's heritage, wouldn't the role have been more suited for someone with German or Polish ancestry? This discrepancy infuriated critics, who said that representation appeared to be significant only when it benefited her. There has been debate about even the Snow White rendition. Zegler rejected those who admired the story's timeless lessons of charity and self-worth, calling it extremely dated. The film may alienate its loyal fanbase by recasting the character as a modern individual. Critics argue that this approach appears more like a business attempt to appeal to contemporary customers than it does to reflect genuine improvement. Given Zegler's conflicted views on representation, these concerns are greatly increased by her engagement. Her portrayal of Maria in West Side Story drew similar criticism. The figure is deeply ingrained in Puerto Rican culture, despite Zegler's lack of Puerto Rican connections. Although her mother is Colombian, she does not have a strong Puerto Rican heritage. By alienating the exact people the film was intended to honor, this disparity added to the film's dismal box office performance. Despite being highly praised by reviewers, the movie only made $76 million worldwide on a $100 million budget, highlighting the gap between its objectives and the response of its audience. Zegler has also drawn attention for his handling of criticism. By asking, "Does it matter?" she supposedly avoided questioning about her ability to depict certain cultures truthfully. So many people care about it, especially when representation is used as both a weapon and a shield. Her selective campaigning has exposed Hollywood's wider inclusiveness issues and irritated those she claims to represent. The Oscars affair served as another example of Zegler's ability to take advantage of public fury for his own gain. After creating a stir on social media, she was eventually invited and even given a presentation during the event, despite first being excluded off the guest list. This deliberate use of outrage reflects a troubling pattern in Hollywood, where claims of representation are routinely used to advance careers rather than to advance genuine diversity. The debate revolves around Zegler's use of identification as a deflective strategy. By portraying herself as a supporter of representation, she avoids accepting accountability for the inconsistencies in her actions. Critics argue that her objective appears to be more in line with career advancement than with truly supporting underrepresented communities. Zegler's predicament is a metaphor for Hollywood's contradictions. Diversity is rarely routinely practiced in the industry, despite the fact that it is occasionally praised in theory. Reducing representation to a marketing gimmick undermines the same progress it claims to promote. The problems surrounding Zegler's roles in Snow White and West Side Story highlight the complexities and shortcomings in Hollywood's inclusion approach, despite the fact that her casting was hailed as a positive development. What are your thoughts on Rachel Zegler's representational approach and the broader issues it highlights in Hollywood? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the entertainment industry. The rise of Rachel Zegler in Hollywood has sparked a lot of conversation about representation and diversity. Even though she regularly portrays herself as a supporter of diversity, there are contradictions in her statements and actions that have drawn criticism. Her choice to play Snow White is among the best examples. Zegler lauded the role, saying it was groundbreaking for a Latina actor. Given that Snow White's origins lie in German folklore, some questioned if the role aligned with her advocacy for cultural authenticity. This disparity shows that she uses representation selectively, appreciating authenticity only when it benefits her. Similar difficulties arose in her role as Maria in West Side Story. The persona is deeply ingrained in Puerto Rican culture, despite Zegler, whose mother is Colombian, having no close Puerto Rican ties. This disparity alienated the Puerto Rican population that the film was intended to honor, which hurt its box office performance. Even with favorable reviews, the film only made $76 million worldwide on a $100 million budget, a significant loss when considering marketing critics' claim that by utilizing representation as a means of advancing his own agenda, Zegler avoids addressing valid concerns. When asked about her cultural connections, she allegedly responded, "Does it matter? Many people care about it, especially when representation is used as both a weapon and a shield." Her selective advocacy, which often feels staged, frustrates the groups she claims to represent. Zegler's handling of public disagreements highlights this tendency even further. She was initially excluded from the Oscars guest list, but after a social media backlash, she was admitted and even gave a presentation. While some celebrated this as a victory for diversity, others regarded it as a planned attempt at self-promotion. At its core, the Zegler debate reflects the greater flaws in Hollywood. Diversity is frequently lauded in theory, but isn't always applied in the workplace. Reducing representation to a marketing gimmick undermines the actual change it claims to promote. What are your thoughts on Rachel Zegler's approach to representation? Does Hollywood's selective commitment to diversity represent a larger problem for the industry as a whole? Please remember to subscribe and leave a comment below for more insights on Hollywood's contradictions.